Welcome to Babergh District Council's Planning Committee. I will now ask the Governance Officer to read out the domestic arrangement and the fire regulations.
Thank you, Chair. Please ensure that microphones are turned off when not in use. Please do not interrupt other speakers or hold separate conversations whilst others are speaking. If you are attending the meeting to speak and persistently interrupt the meeting, you may be asked to leave. Please ensure your mobile phones are on silent or switched off and that your laptop is also switched to silent. I would like to remind everyone present that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. The whole of the meeting will be recorded except where there are confidential or exempt items. If you make a representation to the meeting, you will be deemed by the Council to have consented to being recorded. By entering this meeting as a speaker, you are also consenting to being recorded by the Council and to the possible use of those sound recordings for webcasting and or training purposes. The Council, members of the public and the press may film, record, photograph or broadcast this meeting when the public and the press are not lawfully excluded. If you hear the fire alarm, please leave the building immediately via a fire exit and make your way to the assembly point, which is Ipswich Town Training Ground. Follow the signs directing you to the fire exit at each end of the floor. Do not enter the atrium. If you are in the atrium at the time of the fire alarm, follow the signs to the nearest fire exit. Use the stairs, not the lifts, and please do not re-enter the building until told it is safe to do so. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Claire. Some introductions. With us today are Mark Russell, the Area Planning Manager. Our Legal Advisor is Ian Dupre. The Case Officer is Harry Goodrich. Our Governance Officer you've just met is Claire. The Economic Development Officer is Claire Free. Thank you, Claire. To introduce the new Vice Chair, Helen Davis is here, and I'm Stephen Plum, your Chair for today. Moving on. Do we have any apologies for absence?
Thank you, Chair. We have apologies from Councillor Adrian Osborne and Councillor Mary McLaren is substituting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. To receive declarations of disclosure, pecuniary interest and other registrable and non-registered interests by members. Are there any to declare? No, thank you. Declarations of lobbying. Are there any to declare? Councillor Beale.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I want to ask a question on 3 and 4. When did we decide to add this to the agenda? Was this a decision taken by yourself after consultation? I know with Suffolk have this, but we've never had it before, and I'm not saying I'm against it, but I would have felt that we should have had consultation on these two particular items. To suddenly find it on the agenda, somebody's dictating to us this is what's got to happen. Now, if you tell me it's a government directive or another one, fair enough, but I do think it's rather bad that we were not consulted. Thank you.
Thank you. As far as I'm concerned, it was a governance directive. Claire, would you like to fill in a bit more?
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's generally known as best practice to have those items on the agenda. It supports openness and transparency. If there was a Freedom of Information Act, we'd now be able to just, request, we'd now just be able to look back at the minutes and see who'd been lobbied and who hadn't. That's the reasons they've just been added on there. Thank you.
May I come back, Mr. Chairman? Yes, I understand that and I agree wholeheartedly with you. But I still like to know why it suddenly came in now. We never had it before. You said it's a government... Hang on, let me finish.
No, I'll stop you there because this is not the opportunity.
I'm not sure if it is. I'd like to know all the information about that. Thank you.
It was taken on board as it's a new council after an election. It is on the advice of the government officers, and I have no objection to doing so, and I'm not going to argue the case anymore. Thank you.
But who? That's I want an answer to the question as to who decided to put it on. I'd like information on it, please. Simple as that. I'm not against it, but I'd like to know how we got to this stage. You know, otherwise you can just impose anything and tell us it's a directive.
The decision was made by the corporate manager for governance, and we discussed the item being added to the agenda at the chair's briefing, and the chair was happy. Am I happy?
Happy to do so.
So the answer was it was an officer's decision after discussion with yourself, and you thought it was acceptable. I'm more than happy now that you've explained all that. Difficult to get to this result.
I just think an email to all committee members stating the reasoning for it would have been preferable. Then we wouldn't have had this discussion.
Okay, thank you. Right.
We need to check if there are any.
Right, are there any declarations of lobbying? No? Okay. Declarations of personal site visits. Anyone visited this site? Nope. Right, moving on. Confirmation of the minutes of the meeting held on the 5th of April 2023. Are there any points of accuracy regarding the minutes? Does anyone like to bring up? No? In that case, can I move for approval? Can I have a proposer, please? Councillor Holt. A seconder, Councillor Beer. The Government Office will now conduct.
Thank you, Chair. Members, that vote is now in progress. I'm aware a lot of you would not have been at that last meeting, so I'll ask Ian to correct me if I'm wrong, but you are able to vote on that. You can abstain or you can vote either way. There is no legal requirement of which way you
Just to endorse that, yes, indeed, it's every time we have a voting committee, no matter what for, every member's entitled to vote unless they have a disqualifying interest. It's a local government tradition. It's no more than a tradition. But if you weren't there, you don't vote on the minutes. But when we have a changeover, I think that tradition sometimes can take a back seat. So members can vote or abstain as they see fit.
It's just come through.
Thank you. Come through.
Thank you, members. That's 5 votes for and 6 abstentions, so that's carried.
Thank you very much. Fine. Any notification of petitions?
None received, Chair.
Thank you. Site inspections, Mark.
Yes, Chair. Since briefing, there's been some change in circumstance. We did have 2 sites in Shotley that we were going to ask if members could visit, but one of those applications has now been withdrawn. That just leaves 1 site, which is the one that some members have already visited. So the request was going to come from officers, so we're going to withdraw the request for those visits. So we have no site visits arranged.
Councillor Grandin?
As a new member to this committee, if some members have visited, if it's still coming to committee, wouldn't that be not very good if some members have visited and others will not have?
I think that would be the case if the request had come from a member, but actually no member had requested the site visit. It actually came from the officers because there were 2 sites close to each other. We thought, while we're looking at the other one, we may as well look at this one again. But now the other one's gone away. That's the position we're left in.
Thank you, Mark. Right, moving on to applications. We have DC 23 01002, the Queen's Head, Queen's Road, Erwarton. I will now invite the case officer, Harry Goodridge, to introduce the application to the committee. Thank you, Harry.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, members. So we are looking at application DC 23-01002 at the Queen's Head, Queen's Road in Erwarton. The proposal itself is for the change of use from public house within a sui generis use to a residential use falling within C3. It should be noted that there are no internal nor external alterations within this application, and we are solely looking at the change of use of the building itself to be within a full C3 use. Okay, so looking into some site history, there was a previous proposal on the site for the same scheme that was refused and then dismissed at appeal. The reason for dismissal is up there, but in sort of conclusion, it related to insufficient marketing information having been submitted to prove there was no other optimum viable uses for the building. We have now had an agreed marketing campaign with the economic development team that's been undertaken, and this application has come forward as a result of that. Okay, so looking into policy considerations, the key policies we're looking at here are EM24 for the retention of existing employment sites, CS17 for the rural economy, CS01 for sustainable development, and CN01 for design standards. And then looking forward to the Babergh Mid-Suffolk Joint Local Plan, we'll be looking at LP09 and LP10. Okay, so here we have an aerial map showing the Queen's Head itself within a cluster of residential development and surrounded by agricultural fields in a largely rural setting. So we have the site there outlined in red, showing the public house with the neighbouring property of Broomcott located off to the northeast. So looking at the constraints map, we have the Queen's Head itself being Grade 2 listed, the footpath running to the north of the site, the AOMB to the south, and then obviously further along to the east, we have a Grade 1 listed building and 2 further Grade 2 listed buildings. So if we're looking at the top right picture, we have the site location itself. It's about here on the picture, and it shows the Queen's Head itself in relation to the remainder of Erwarton off to the side here. The bottom plan here shows the Queen's Head within its car park, with its car parking and access point running up the side of the site here. And then off to the left here, we have, again, a block plan showing the Queen's Head with the numerous sort of extensions, flat roofed and pitched roof extensions that have been added over time. So looking at some site photos, obviously we have the Queen's Head itself here with the extensions that have been added on over time. So here we have the Queen's Head itself, the sort of the historical core of the building that has been retained, and then obviously, as I've just previously stated, we have a number of sort of extensions that have been added on over time with the access point going down the side. So this picture obviously shows the neighbouring property at Broomcott with the access point running down the side of the property, and this is obviously the Queen's Head itself. So this is a photo heading away from the site to the southwest. It's heading towards sort of Harkstead and then even further into Holbrook. This is heading to the northeast, heading out and through Erwarton into sort of Shotley and the facilities there. So the key issues we have with this application, and it's a non-exhaustive list, but it's an important community facility, the loss of the public house, impact on local economy, community interest in purchasing the asset, the loss of potential employment opportunities, the public house has been neglected, no attempt to operate the public house as a business, and incorrect marketing. The application is recommended for approval, subject to the conditions found in the papers. And thank you, Chair.
Quick point, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Yes, I just need to make a correction. This is, sorry, I'm dropping things here. This is not Harry's fault because he's done the right thing and reported to you all the comments of the consultees. If you look at page 11 under SCC Highway Authority, I was just a bit concerned they refer to C3 residential use, and I mean, highways officers know about traffic and highways. They're not planners. But to be absolutely precise, the Queen's Head, like many old pubs, has had residential accommodation within it for the landlord, landlady and their family. That's not C3. That is ancillary residential accommodation within the single planning unit of the pub. So I just wanted to correct that to make sure there was no misunderstanding there. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. We also have an agenda item correction that was tabled yesterday. Have you all read it and applied it? Right, I suggest I give you a couple of minutes now to read it. It's only correcting grammatical errors, isn't it, Harry? But that's should have been emailed to you yesterday.
If you look on, it should be on the agenda, on the
We've got some paper copies which Beth can bring round if anybody needs one.
Mary, you okay? Thank you very much. Okay. We'll now move on to questions for the case officer. Councillor Mabry.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, thank you, Harry. I have two questions. First of all, could you bring back photo number 9, please? Picture of a gate beside the property. Thank you. That one. Yes. Is that the gate to the car park or the gate to separate ancillary?
So that's the gate to the car park to the rear of the site.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. So that's access to the car park. Thank you. And secondly, can you explain to me what incorrect marketing means?
Obviously, the points brought up on slide 13 in terms of the key issues were what has been raised from the consultation we've had with the community through our site notice and letters. That was a summary of what has been brought up. In terms of the incorrect marketing, I'll ask Claire, because she might be able to point in a better direction as to the sort of inconsistencies with, or the discrepancies between the marketing points of view.
The community statement is that their assessment of the marketing differs to the marketing campaign that we agreed with the agents and the applicants at the time in March 2021, without going over all the different points that have, but that's what they mean by incorrect marketing, is that it that's my understanding, is that it fundamentally differs from the agreed marketing campaign.
You want another one, Margaret?
Yes, probably to both Harry and to Claire. Does this mean that the marketing strategy is now null and void because it was incorrect as to what was agreed?
May I, Chair?
Yes, Dave.
Sorry, is it so? I may have got lost here, but was Harry reporting the fact that people had written in saying they thought there was incorrect marketing? So that's not the view of the officers. So if you members of the public are writing, or whoever said that is expressing concern that the marketing exercise is not sufficient for the committee to be able to draw a conclusion that there's no realistic future as a public house. That's the point. I think that's the point that's been made, that's been reported to you, but that's not the view of the council's officers.
Right, thank you. So that confirms it's not the view of officers. Right, thank you.
Councillor Beer, you had a question?
Just following on from that, just to be clear, the marketing that has been done now is correct. They have followed the correct procedures, done the time on it, or will be up by the time it's
So the marketing,
so that we're clear that we're not talking about
the marketing that has been undertaken was the marketing that was agreed with the economic development team in 2021.
Councillor Wyman.
Thank you, Chair. To Councillor Beer's point and also to Councillor Mabel's point on the marketing, there's quite strong anecdotal evidence through the pub
Is
sector.
this a question for the office?
Sorry?
Is this a
Yes, yes.
Thank
it
you.
is. In relation to the marketing, do office holders consider that the time of the marketing exercise was appropriate based upon the fact that we were just coming out of Omicron and the pub sector was extremely depressed? Thank you, Chair.
Harry, I'll ask Claire to... Claire, if you wouldn't mind.
The marketing campaign was carried out for a full 12 months, which is what policy is the most the policy can ask for. We pushed the client to carry out the full 12 months, which they did. So in that respect, the marketing and the price was agreed as the agent that was used was a responsible and respected leisure and hospitality specialist. The terms of the campaign, the price and details and the way the marketing campaign was carried out were agreed by officers with the applicant and the agent at the time, and the campaign was carried out for the full 12 months as requested. That's what the policy asks for.
Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Holt.
Yeah, Harry, can you clarify if the ancillary accommodation is actually being used or has been used over recent years, or has it been closed off since the pub was shut? And secondly, I think it would have been useful to see the back of the building as well, just to see the state of the car park, etc., and the back fabrication of the building.
So, in terms of the first point, the ancillary accommodation, we don't have any information submitted under the application. Obviously, we can only deal with what's put in front of us, an application. We haven't been provided with anything to say when the accommodation was used, if it's used, anything like that. It's got an ancillary accommodation at first floor level. I wouldn't say it's necessary, and Mark may be able to support me here. I wouldn't say it's an onus that they have to provide us definitive information that says that it's used there and then. And the second point, yeah, I can only apologise for the lack of a picture to the rear and the parking space. Hopefully the aerial map does enough to steer that.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if
1 moment. Councillor McCarran.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just clarify the point that Councillor Wyman made? I accept all you say about they fulfil the 12 months. But the comment that Councillor Wyman made was that at the time it was done was a time of great changes in the hospitality sector. As it was, and was that ever considered, that the fact that hospitality businesses all over the United Kingdom are struggling and selling businesses like that? Can I just clarify that?
Can I get Claire to... Claire, please.
So the price, the way a marketing campaign is agreed, the agent has to provide evidence of comparable prices to justify the price that they are asking for the property. This was done at the time. In March 2021, the market was slightly better than it is now. We're 2 years further on. It's a different picture now. But at the time the marketing campaign was agreed, it was slightly different. So the agents provided evidence of comparable prices and were confident that that was appropriate at the time. And we agreed with their campaign. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. Catherine, Councillor Grandin.
Thank you, Chair. I don't know if this is the appropriate time, but may I ask Claire about community assets? How could she remind us of how the system works and that kind of thing, please?
I don't profess to be an expert on ACUVs, but I do know that in the context of this case, the community did previously apply to have the property registered as an ACV, but at that time it had been closed for such a long time, it fell outside of the terms which would make it appropriate for an ACV, so it didn't get one.
Thank you, Claire. Can I ask, do we know when the last time it was open as a public house?
I believe it was 2009, but there are...
I've heard 14 years mentioned.
2009. Thank you.
I think Councillor Carruthers needs a definition of an ACB.
One moment. Councillor Carruthers.
This one. Yeah, what was it, an ACV, ACB? I don't know what that is, sorry. New.
It's an asset of community value.
Need any more help on that? I mean,
Do you need?
do we need to go to any more detail?
I don't think so, Ian, because we're in the situation where it's not an ACV, so it hasn't been given an ACV. We'll do that. Councillor Davis.
Sorry.
Okay, thank you, Chair. It's a question for Claire. You said the marketing campaign completed 2 years ago. Well, a lot can change in 2 years. Is there any guidance about maybe repeating a marketing campaign if you exceed a certain period before submitting an application following completion of a marketing campaign?
So the campaign was agreed 2 years ago and finished a year ago. And you'll see from my response that I did say that, you know, maybe the relevance of that had been diminished by the time difference between the campaign ending and the application coming in. However, we have nothing in policy that asks for there to be a definite period after a marketing campaign for it still to be valid. So the marketing campaign stands.
Thank you.
Councillor Maybury, did you have another question?
Yes, and I'm sorry to bring this up, but it is a new committee here. But my colleague here, Councillor Wyman, seems to have some extra information that we don't have. Isn't that folder? We don't have that. I don't have it. So I don't know what that is.
I read from that information, Chair. Sorry. I read from that information, Chair, in relation to the point I made about the Omicron, and it was
Sorry, say it again.
I used that information to deduce the Omicron basis of my comment.
Sorry if I may. It's just Councillor Wyman was making a general comment about the effect of the national emergency on the economy and pubs in particular. That's fair. I think that's fair enough, Chair. Not specific information to this application.
Thank you.
Well, I think that's quite all right.
Thank you. Councillor McLaren, you have another question.
Thank you, Chair. A question for Harry. Was this accommodation ever used for like bed and breakfast, or so? Was the pub accommodation ever used in a broader sense than just the public house?
So, looking at the site history, it doesn't look as if it was ever used as sort of a Airbnb or a B&B or anything like that. It looks to have solely been used in association with the running of the public house itself.
If I may, I'd only add that pubs can sometimes do that without express planning permission, unless the applicant or some of the speakers might be able to assist the committee with the history more, perhaps.
Thank you, Ian. Excuse me. Is that an answer that will help the person make the decision? Okay, very quickly then. You wanted to say?
Been used for bed and breakfast or Airbnb.
Thank you very much. Councillor Register, you are.
Yes, actually, following on from that point, it's a question. If it hasn't, how come the owners have never tried to actually gain any revenue by renting out, for example, the ancillary residential area of the property, which is what other people with closed pubs have done? I'm not sure I understand why that's not happened.
I guess the long and short of it is there's no requirement for them to necessarily rent out the space, or that they can own the building. You know, people own buildings all the time and don't do anything with them. It's unfortunate, but I don't think there's any requirement for them to necessarily rent out the space in that sense.
Sorry, if I may, Chair. Were they to have done that, rented out the rooms and not run the pub, I think we'd have found ourselves in a change of use situation there. if they had rooms ancillary to the running of the pub, that probably, as Mr. Dupre said, wouldn't need planning permission. But if the pub's closed and not running and they've got rooms upstairs they're renting out, I think that would be a material change of use.
Thank you. Councillor Grandin.
Thank you, Chair. So can I just confirm that the pub has just stood derelict or empty since 2009, doing nothing?
On the information we have, yes.
And we don't know whether the owners have lived above or not during this
We don't have that
period?
information either, no.
And no one's asked? Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions for the officer? If not, thank you very much, Harry. Right, we have representative of the parish meeting. I can't read my own writing now, here. Christine Kyle, you have 3 minutes to address the committee.
Good morning. I'm here to represent the planning group for Erwarton Parish meeting. The following are the views of the group, and they are broadly the same as those we gave in our consultee comments at the end of March. As the district council elections have resulted in some changes in the personnel of the council, it may be helpful if I sum up now, briefly, the story of the Queen's Head. The Queen's Head, named for the close link that the village has with the life of Anne Boleyn, is a fine Grade 2 listed building in a central location within the parish. It is believed to have functioned as a pub since the time it was first built. It has always been well supported in this role, and there are older parishioners with memories reaching back to the 1950s ready to verify this. The pub operated successfully under 2 owners from around 1979 through to 2006, when some inept decisions over its future direction eroded its customer base. It underwent a complete refurbishment, but failed to rebuild its clientele and was sold in October 2010. The pub's new owners announced their plan to reopen the pub as an ale house, coffee shop, and art gallery, achieving some publicity through the East Anglian Daily Times. They confirmed this intention at a parish meeting. However, although some works were undertaken for this purpose, nothing positive came from their pronouncements. For the last 2 years, a community pub group has been working hard to save the building as a community asset, with strong support from the Erwarton Parish meeting. There can be no doubt that resurrecting the Queen's Head would bring huge benefits to the parish. Since the late 1980s, the building has had a large extension known as the Orangery. This was built as a dining area and function room, but could also be useful in other ways for the community, particularly as Erwarton does not possess a village hall. There have been some 50 objections to the application for change of use, with only 2 supporting it. In the years since the pub's closure, the village has also gained a significant number of new houses, with more to come, which will add to the pub's potential customer base. The Erwarton Parish Meetings Planning Group strongly objects, therefore, to the application for a change of use, and we hope very much that committee will support us, the community, and refuse it. Thank you.
Representative. Councillor Maybury.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much for your report. If I could ask you, how many inhabitants are there in Erwarton, please?
Around 126.
126. Thank you very much.
Councillor Grandin.
Thank you, Chair. I think I read somewhere in the report that in the region of over £70,000 has been promised, if that's a word. Where would that be likely to materialise? Would that increase?
I'm sure that this gentleman who is going to speak on behalf of the Save the Erwarton Queen community will be able to give you all the facts and figures on that one.
Thank you.
Any more questions for this speaker? Councillor Register.
What is the nearest other pubs to?
There are some in Shotley.
And how far is that?
That's about 1.5 miles away, 2 miles.
And are there footpaths to that?
Not directly. You would have to walk along the footpaths, the Store and Orwell path,
right.
Or along the roads. Yeah.
Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Chair. Could you tell me where your community currently meet, if there is a need to do so?
In the church.
Thank you.
Councillor Grandin.
Thank you, Chair. Is there any hotel or other tourist accommodation
Absolutely
in the near
none.
vicinity?
No, not in the vicinity. No.
Thank you.
No? Thank you very much. We have another parish meeting representative, I understand. Is that correct, sir?
I'm actually on the Friends of the
Right, okay. Fine. Well,
the community group.
you're the community group. So it's Steve Smith, the community group. You have 3 minutes to address the committee.
Thank you. I'm here on behalf of the community group, which was trying to buy the pub to turn it into a community-owned business. I'm here to speak on behalf of the committee, which is chaired by William Rinch, local farmer, who happens to be in the Canaries this week. The applicants have owned this property for over 10 years now, and they've never attempted to trade from the property. There was a decision on the Henley Cross Quays a few years back where the planning inspector concluded that whether reasonable efforts have or have not been made to maintain a viable public house business is relevant to the planning decision. And we think those efforts haven't been made by these owners. We don't believe that the 2021 marketing of the property was at a price that reflected its commercial status, its non-trading history and its state of disrepair. The agents used by the owners had previously produced a report stating that the business was not viable, a conclusion not actually supported by our own commissioned report. So it doesn't then follow that they marketed the premises at £115,000 more than the price which was paid by the owners, and also stating that the property now requires in excess of £100,000 of repairs, thanks to the current owner's neglect. The marketing campaign, as stated in this chamber, took place during a period of uncertainty in the pub trade in general, thanks to COVID. We think the value of a pub is what someone's willing to pay for it, not what the owners are willing to sell it for. And we think in the light of those circumstances, with an overage clause on the pub as well, the price asked was patently ridiculous. We're actively working to put in a community bid for the pub. We've got fantastic levels of support shown locally, but we need more time in order to secure government funding from the Community Ownership Fund, and we can't access this without the pub being for sale. We appreciate if the application's thrown out, they still don't have to sell it to us, but it'd be nice to have the chance. When the pub was suddenly withdrawn from the market, we tried on numerous occasions to contact the owners to make our intentions clear. They ignored every one of those attempts, and we tried to contact the agents who told us that it was nothing to do with them anymore. This lack of communication suggests there was no genuine attempt to find a buyer for the business. In short, we believe the marketing campaign was a bit of a sham by the owners, and that Claire's and the committee's conclusion from 2019 still stands, that the argument has not been fully tested.
Thank you. Your time is up.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions for this speaker? Councillor Register?
Thank you for that. Can you tell me what the overage clause was about and how it worked? within the constraints of the contracts?
I can't actually tell you the percentages, but it was a percentage of any uplift in the value of the property. So, for example, if the property was purchased for £200,000 and then sold for 250 at some time in the future, the owners would gain a percentage of that uplift of £50,000.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. One moment. I'm going to ask Claire so she can clarify that point, please.
So it's quite standard for an agent to use an overage clause because we agree that to discourage speculative residential development, because speculative residential interest in a property, because frequently a commercial property, when it hits the market, obviously is at a substantially lower price than it would be if it was a residential property. So you will get developers and other people who will buy a property on the off chance that they can then sell it on as residential or develop it as residential later on. Pubs are particularly attractive in this respect because they have car parks, so you can squeeze a few more in. So we never mind when an agent uses an overage clause because we do not want to be having the same conversation with another new owner later on down the line when we tell them that no, you can't just change it to residential. You might have bought it with that intent, but it was never sold with that intent. So we use the overage clause to discourage that speculative interest. Does that make it? Is that helpful?
It is, except for the fact that this property was run down. So therefore, if it was then done up and then sold, the overage clause would come into, or changed ownership. The overage clause would come into effect, even though it might not be used, it might not be effective, done for the reasons of making it purely residential.
The overage clause should only be applied if there is a change of use. So if it was sold on as another pub, you know, if it remained in a pub use or a commercial use, it wouldn't apply. But if it was sold on as residential, then that's when it would cut in. So that's how it discourages speculative residential development.
Thank you, Claire. Any more questions? Councillor McLaren first, then Councillor McLaren.
Thank you, Chair. Mr Smith, I know that the pledges you've had is in the region of £75,000 or similar. With the other funding, how, in your expectation, how long are you going to, is it going to take for you to achieve that other funding?
We would hope about 18 months.
18?
Yeah.
Okay.
Which we appreciate is a long time, but the government want plans in place. They don't want us going ahead without getting our ducks in a row.
And I've just got one second question. Having said that, I forgot what I was going to ask. Sorry about that. Can I come back? Well,
if you be so kind to.
Yeah.
Can you? Thank you. Councillor Carter, you have a question.
Thank you. I was just going to ask about the time frame and how much longer you needed for the community bid. But the money that you're hoping to get, is that just for the purchase or is that for the repairs as well?
It's a bit of everything. We don't think the repairs are anywhere near, or we don't think we'd have to pay as much for the repairs as stated in the marketing documents, simply because we've got local labour we can use, we've got people on the committee, we've got people within the village who will do things for us for a little, in comparison with what Rose Builders, who are the people commissioned by Erwarton Coal to produce their estimate.
Thank you. Councillor Holt.
This may be for Ian, but it relates to a question that, or a comment the gentleman's just made. He made the comment there was no effort has been made to maintain the building, it's been neglected. In planning law, is there any way that we could take comments like that or factual information like that into account, that if an owner basically neglects it, runs it down to rack and ruin, to the point that it's of no use to anyone anymore other than converting it, is there anything in planning law that gives us a position to argue that and fight against it, because it seems to be quite a common thing these days that villages have pubs closed and they're just run down, neglected, ruined to the point that all I can do with it is have it as residential. So is there anything other than a marketing policy, EM24, that we could argue against, that someone is doing that on purpose with a sole reason to change a use?
I understand the point. I'll let Harry or Mark go first, and then I'll come in later because that's something you're often familiar with, I think.
I think of relevance here is the fact it's a listed building. So if it had been left in such a state that urgent repairs were required, we can use that legislation to make the building weathertight, weatherproof, and actually do any repairs that are necessary. But your general point about letting a building slowly degrade, let's say, the quick answer is no.
You got what?
Is there a longer answer?
There will be a longer answer which still end up me saying no.
It's true that planning inspectors don't like situations where something's been done to bring about a result, but there isn't very much in national or local policy that you could hang a reason for refusal on. I think that's the longer answer. Would you agree?
Thank you. Councillor Carruthers, you were.
This one. Hello, yes. I was wondering whether, I suppose this is a question to both of you really, when the pub was open, how often was it used for local meetings and functions? I mean, I assume was it regularly used? Because I imagine that the church... Yeah, you know,
Yeah.
and also does it provide the same kind of facilities?
No, there aren't any facilities in the church. There aren't any lavatories, for example, in the church. The church is a 13th century building, very beautiful, and of course it's Grade 1 listed, so you can't change that and suddenly add loos and kitchens and things like
so
that.
There's no
so
other
it would be
facility.
very helpful.
We have our parish meetings there in February, so that they're over very quickly because there's a limited amount of heating. So.
Yeah. A point of order, Mr. Chairman. We seem to be debating rather than asking questions. And everybody is sort of jumping in.
Well, thank you, Margaret.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Have you had an answer to your question?
Yes, I have. Could I ask another?
Thank you. We'll come back to you in debate if you wish. Councillor Grandin, you were...
I think Councillor Carruthers had another question as well.
Let's do Councillor Grandin. We'll come back to you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. We've already heard that the area has a very small population. If you were able to take over the premises at some stage as a community, could it be run viably?
MJ Hughes, who are specialists in valuing and viability assessing community-owned public houses. And their report tells us it's viable. We wouldn't want a report that told us it was viable that we didn't believe in, because we're the ones putting forward the money.
Can I do a supplementary question to that, please? So how do you plan to run it as a viable business? Because it would need to be that. You know, are there going to be big changes to it that you would plan to make to enable it to be?
We don't think that there are major changes. The pub was actually viable prior to it closing. It had 2 bad years, one of which was when the landlady changed. They brought new people in and tried to turn it into a kind of gastro pub, which just doesn't suit the situation it's in. Prior to that, it did really well. You can see the change of landlady. If you look at the turnover figures, they dropped off a cliff at that stage. It made the owner unpopular. Some people boycotted the pub. A lot of that trade will come back. We don't need to make too many changes to the structure of the building. One thing that the current landlord, or I say landlords, current owners, have done is pulled out the bar, which doesn't really bode well for the fact that they thought, you know, this happened, I think, a year into, or possibly less, into their ownership. They pulled the bars out and lots of the fittings downstairs. So we just think that shows their intention from the start was that this was going to be an investment of the kind that Claire has just said we don't want to see.
Thank you.
Councillor Carruthers, you had another question.
Yeah, I was just wondering, as local people, whether you knew when it was last lived in, when the building was last inhabited, or whether anyone's living there at the moment.
They're living in Australia at the moment. And they have been for, I think, around about a year. Over the years, they've come and gone. It's been kind of a family home for some of that time, but how much, I wouldn't know. They don't really seem to take any interest in the local community. I've spoken to them 2 or 3 times in the course of the 12 or so years that they've lived there.
So it hasn't been standing empty for all of this time. They are coming and going.
Yeah. But downstairs is still the pub area.
Yeah.
Upstairs, living area.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McLaren, you had another one.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Mr Smith, actually I was interested in the objections. They were quite wide, from a wide area, well outside the area of
Yes.
Shotley and Ipswich. So, and sailors obviously can moor in at Erwarton Creek. But I just wanted to ask you about your strategy, because if tourism is the main industry for Shotley Peninsula, what other competitors are there around Erwarton?
We don't think there are many competitors of that kind. Shotley Rose is the nearest pub. It's a bit basic. It's not what we'd be looking to run. They were one of the 2 supporters of the application, I believe, and we think that's because they have a vested interest in not having competition up the road. The Bakers Arms in Hartstead's closed down, as has the Compasses at Holbrook. So there are 2 pubs in the area, which are, I believe, Compasses at Holbrook. They're trying to turn that into flats, and the landlord of the Bakers Arms, we believe, is asking far too much money for a tenant to move in there, and that's been on the market for, or not on the market, but up for rental for considerable time.
So if I was coming to Shotley as a tourist or on a bike, because we have a lot of cyclists and walkers, there really is very little for me to stop and have some sort of refreshment.
Yeah, there are other pubs around, but from the road,
I think we're getting a little bit away from the... Thank you very much, but I think we're getting a little bit away from the subject in hand.
Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Register, you had your hand up.
Yeah, it sort of follows on from Mary's question, which is how busy is the road going through Erwarton in terms of... I'm thinking in terms of passing trade for a pub, and also if there is no pub... It's about the viability of the pub.
Come to it. Is it a busy road you're asking? Are you?
It's not a busy road, and that's part of the pub's appeal. It was always a destination pub. People drove out there from Ipswich to have a meal.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We now have the ward member, Councillor Davis. You have 5 minutes to address the committee.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I'll just quickly talk about the sustainability. The Erwarton Queen was and would still be very popular among cyclists because while it's not a busy road, it's a very small road, cyclists love it for that exact reason. So the trade would be of cyclists and also walkers. If you look at, I think it's screen number 9, the slide number 9, you can see the proximity to Ness Road, which goes down to the farm, which goes down to Erwarton Foreshore, a very popular walking route from Shotley to Erwarton and on to Holbrook Creek, Hartsden, Erwarton Creek, Holbrook Creek. So, and again, another attraction would be the tourist in terms of walkers and cyclists, a very important aspect. The other thing to point out while we're talking about viability, the pubs that have closed, as been mentioned, were hard commercial pubs. This is more than just a pub. This is ideally going to be a community facility. It's been pointed out that the church is not ideal. I know, I've been to the meetings there, and as lovely as it is, you don't want to spend too long there. So having a designated space for the community is absolutely ideal. And it's exactly what Babergh as a council and Babergh as a planning committee want to do. We want to engage with our communities. We want to support our communities. And this sort of application, turning this grade 2 building from a house to from a house into full residential, is not what the community want, and it's not what we as a council should be supporting. We should be supporting the residents who have got this group together. They're well organised. They've got support from the Plunkett Foundation and many other national organisations, so I can see that working. Reasons for refusal, well, they're in your papers actually, although obviously it's recommended for refusal. You can start you start with the EM24 and the appeal that was given, and the judgment there was that it hasn't, the full employment opportunities and viability haven't been fully explored. Now, I totally understand where the officer's come from, the economic growth, and I can understand her report because of the information she's been given. But you've seen today, quite clearly, the employment opportunity hasn't been fully explored because the owners refused to engage with the Friends of Erwarton Queen group. So I would suggest that EM24 hasn't been completely satisfied. And yes, there are a lot of anecdotal, and I can give you some as well, I won't in committee, about the lack of proper marketing and lack of genuine desire to make it go back into a pub. That it just wasn't done. The owners, in fairness to them, want to turn it into a residential for their own reasons. The heritage officer has reported about the heritage aspects. And while on the outside, as has been stated, probably not a lot of work would need to be done, certainly nothing structural. There's a large car park to help the pub, although, like I say, many people will use it either cycling, walking, or walking from within the village to get to the pub. But inside, the damage that has been done and the work, if it became a house, would be extensive. And there are concerns that about the damage that would happen to a grade 2 pub inside. If it were to be returned to a bar, well, exactly, the bar counter would return, the rest would be cleaned up, the orangery would be used as the community space as well as a restaurant, so there would be no impact in terms of that if it became a pub. The rest is all on page 15 and 16 of your papers. You can see the principles of development. This is the retention and development of accessible local services and community facilities. I can go on, but you can read it for yourself. This is what they want to return it to a pub, a once thriving pub. They want to bring it back for community use and support economic growth for Babergh in terms of a tourism aspect. And basically 3.2, 3.3, the rural economy should be sustained through a number of measures. Again, this is one of those measures. We would argue that it helps a rural economy to have a thriving pub and it supports the community. So a really important aspect. The rest on there, 3.5, 3.6, 3.7, they're all reasons to refuse the owner's application and therefore allow the community group to come forward and give them another offer, have at least open a dialogue, because at the moment the owners won't even talk to the group. You can draw your own conclusion to that. Yeah, I've mentioned about EM24. I can't believe I've gone over. Thank you very much.
Any questions for the member? No? Thank you. We'll now move on. I will now invite the debate to begin. Who would like to kick off? Councillor Beer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, certainly listening to all the comments and the public speakers, I think we've all experienced public houses in our areas that have closed. I have had one very recently close. We have a population of adults, I suppose, about 8,000 or 9,000 pounds. We have 3 pubs left in Great Cornard, so they're going there. But some of those pubs don't open on a Monday, some don't open Monday and Tuesday. I find it very hard to believe that you can make this pay in a village like Erwarton. You say pass and trade is likely to be cyclists or walkers and what have you. But I think being realistic, and we have to be realistic here, that while there's all good intentions, they haven't come forward, they haven't got there. This has been going backwards and forwards for years. I think the officers have done all they can do. The marketing has been correct. We've been told that. So I think at the end of all this, I'm going to propose, Mr. Chairman, the officers' recommendation.
You are proposing that?
Yes, I am proposing.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Maybury, seconded. Right. We'll park that. Any more comments that anyone to make? Councillor Holt.
Yeah, I disagree with Councillor Beer and Councillor Maybury, actually. I think it should be within our gift to retain these type of pubs within our communities. They're an asset to them. They may only have 120 odd people, but they draw people in from a wider area. I think it's been noted about cycling. I think once you lose these out of a community, they're gone forever. You'll never get anything back to replace them. They're the life and soul of some communities, and it's a shame that so many small hamlets and villages have lost their pubs over the years. So I'm a strong believer in retaining these establishments, as I believe they have a fundamental meaning to the rural communities, and the health and social benefit they bring, I think, is immense. I note that certainly the only thing we seem to be I have against it is EM24, and from what I've heard so far, yes, they've complied, but it's very sketchy. It's very vague in how they've done it, and I don't really think that, yes, they've complied to it, it would appear, but I don't hold out a lot of confidence in that the actual process involved in it was good. I certainly won't be supporting it, as I believe that we should be, as I say, retaining these within our communities. They're a huge benefit, as I've said, and as I say, I won't be supporting it.
Thank you, Councillor Holt. Councillor Register, you wish to?
Yeah. I think this case, I'm not convinced that the marketing was carried out at an effective time. And if, as we've heard, they ripped out all the pub infrastructure, then it's not going to appeal to anybody who might be wishing to to purchase it as a pub anyway, because you're suddenly increasing the costs for any potential purchaser. Which and that could have been done. My view is, was that done on purpose or not? I do think that clearly we need to retain pubs in small villages because they need a centre. And if we keep losing them, then we end up losing communities in villages, and that's really not a good position to be in Babergh. And if they can attract tourists and cyclists, and that area is one of the areas that we would really like to attract more cyclists and create more cycling infrastructure, I think it could well be a good destination pub. I am therefore minded to oppose, to recommend refusal on this.
We already have a proposal on the table at this moment in time. So if and when we've dealt with that, we may come back to you looking for another.
That's fine.
Thank you. Councillor Grandin.
Thank you, Chair. I'm minded not to support the current proposal as well. Once it's gone, it's gone. It seems to me that the owners have deliberately allowed or possibly may have deliberately allowed the pub to fall into the state that it's currently in. It seems to me that the proposals from the groups that we've heard from today may have viability, and I would like to give them the opportunity. I think if they were to choose to do tourist accommodation as well, that would certainly give the premises a chance of becoming very viable. So I would like to think that we could give them the opportunity to make it a viable community asset and possibly a strong business.
Thank you, Councillor Grandin. Can I just absolutely clarify with Claire? As far as the marketing is concerned, there is nothing the District Council can do further.
No, the campaign was agreed. It ran for 12 months. They provided reports on a regular basis. And we had conversations with the agent as well, and were assured that during that campaign no offer, either written or verbal, was made by the community group to the owners during that period of campaign.
Thank you, Claire. Councillor McLaren, you were next.
Thank you, Chair. Yesterday, Chair, some of us had the benefit of listening to the leader and the deputy leader share their vision for this new administration, and the emphasis was on the economy and thriving communities. And for me, stopping a business developing I don't think is right, and therefore I will not be supporting the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Holt.
Yeah, 12.6 on the report. Sufficient marketing information has been provided in this instance to show the building is not viable as a public house. That's a bold statement to make. Not viable as a public house. Is that really what EM24 is designed to do? Not viable as a public house? That's a statement that I think is way beyond its meaning. And all it's saying is that no one wants to pay the money for it. I don't think you can say it's not viable as a public house. We've got a gentleman over here who quite clearly believes it is viable as a public house. So I think that's the wrong wording in there, and I think it's misleading.
Claire, would you like to comment? Mark?
I was just going to say that is how the policy is framed. It should be marketed for that and other employment uses. Actually, if you look further down, and it was, well, we've done the assessment, and it was found not to be so. Therefore, I think the wording, I understand why you say that, because obviously people disagree, but if we work through what the policy says, that is the conclusion we reach.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Maybury?
Thank you.
Before we move to the vote on your motion.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have visited this area quite a few times, so I would say that I do know it. I also have within my ward the instances of public houses which have either closed or we are hoping, because it's been refurbished, that it will be reopened. But again, there has not been a secure tenant. It is a difficult situation for the hospitality trade wherever you are. I also have within my ward, which is a huge tourist attraction, instances of accommodation not being fully booked at this time, which is really unusual. They are really struggling, some of them. My decision to support the officers is A, we have to respect our officers. They have done their due diligence. They have looked at this, and we have to respect their view. We can't just say we don't like it. I am the biggest community person probably in this room, but I don't think that this is viable, and we may well be better saying that this property goes into residential use, and perhaps it will attract a family that will support the surrounding infrastructure and whatever that could possibly be. I know it's really sad, but sometimes you have to draw a line under this, because I really don't think that it is viable as is suggested. And I have loads of experience with looking at the attractions of a particular site for something similar that has been suggested here, and it was deemed not viable, and it was a huge art gallery. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Maybury. Councillor Holt.
I just want to come back to Councillor Maybury. I don't think anyone here is not respecting our officers' opinions, but we have our own, and that's what we're here to do, to judge on our own opinions. So I'd just like to point that we do respect the officers, but we are here to judge it on our own merits.
Thank you. Any more comments from anyone else?
Chair, could I just make a couple of points before members...
Well, you're going to be summarising what they're voting on.
Yes,
so
but I just wanted to clear up a couple of points, yeah. What I would advise members is, we've heard from the community group, and you know, the sympathies for it are understood, but I would ask you not to allow the fact that there's a community group and they'd like a bit more time and all of those things to inform your decision. It shouldn't be based on that. It should rather be based on a general conclusion that more marketing is needed. It needs to be done differently, better. Just a general approach to it rather than thinking about the community group. And the second point was there was a suggestion it could be used for tourist accommodation, etc. I mean, that's understood, but that's not what's being presented today. So just stick to the principles of what's being proposed, and yeah, over to you.
Thank you, Mark. Can I now get you to read out exactly what the voting will be on?
Yes, it's as per the agenda, Chair, and not changed at all by the table papers. So the motion is that the officer's recommendation that change of use from sui generis to C3 dwelling house be approved with the conditions which are listed on pages 19 to 21. 6 conditions, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, fine. We will now move to a vote. Claire, can I get you to organise that?
Thank you, Chair. Members, that vote is now in progress. Okay, that's no problem. I can take your vote verbally if you'd like. Do you want to do that now? Against, thank you, Gav.
My system's frozen too.
Okay, no problem. Can I take your vote verbally?
Against.
Thank you. Thank you, members. Chair, that is 3 votes for and 8 votes again. Therefore, that motion is lost. Thank you.
Motion.
So, Chair, if I may intervene, so that to state the obvious, there's no authority to issue planning permission, but there's equally no authority to do anything else. Opposites don't necessarily follow. If there is to be a refusal, there would be a proposal. I have to look for a proposer and seconder with reasons for refusal, which you may need some advice from the officers on, or there are always other options such as postponing and asking for more information on certain matters. That's for members to say what they wish now.
If I may, Chair.
Yes, you carry on, Mark.
I think, members, it's for you now to decide what you want to do. I think really what you're asking us is going to tell us what you'd like us to do. Do you want us to take this away and get a second opinion on the valuation? Do you want us to even ask for another period of marketing, which in our new policy would be, and reasonably would be 6 months now? What would you like us to do? So have, debate amongst yourselves.
Councillor Davis.
I do apologise. I'm feeling slightly queasy. Would you mind if I stepped out for a couple of minutes?
No. We'll take a break, by all means.
Can I just remind members that no discussion regarding this if you're going out the room? Thank you.
Okay, right. You've now voted to refuse the application.
No.
Sorry, you've voted to refuse the proposal that was made. What we now have to do is we either have to, you have to give us grounds for the reasons for not approving of it at this particular stage, or you've got to give instructions back to the planning officers as to what you need to make another decision, as you keep expressing the fact that you have doubts about some of the marketing and viability. Councillor Holt, do you want to...
Yeah, I believe Para 84, Para 93, CS 17, CS 15, CS 21, all noted in the report, are policies that we hold within the district, within the council, to support and maintain and ensure that these type of premises are kept within our communities. And I believe all these policies apply in that we should refuse, as we already have done, but I would put those forward as reasons for refusal on that basis. And I would also add a comment that I believe that EM24, even though we've been told it has been complied to, I would like to see it remarketed at what I would consider a reasonable price. But policy-wise, I believe Para 84, Para 93, CS 17, 15 and 21 are reasons for us to do that.
Let's catch up with the planning mind.
And you added failure to comply with EM24 as well, is that correct?
I take guidance on that because obviously EM24 we've been told has been complied to technically. My argument would be that it is now a year ago and I would question the marketing campaign. I know we agreed it, but I would also like us to review our reasoning for that, and I would encourage us, if we could, for it to be remarketed. But as a reason for refusal, Mark, I'm sticking to the ones I quoted you.
You happy with that?
I don't know whether members want to debate whether to just go for refusal or to talk about this, Councillor Holt's second point about the marketing and how you'd like to see that done differently, and whether we should be allowed to take it away and make sure that happens. It's for members to debate, Chair.
Comments from anyone? Councillor Register, your hand went up first.
Yes, in terms of EM24, I would. My problem with it is the timing. And it was during lockdown, and when the state of the economy was in a very weird place, and I'm not entirely convinced that even if the property had been in a good state of repair and easily turned into a viable pub, which I am also unconvinced by, that it would have achieved good marketing in the state of society and the economy at the time, because it was just at the end of lockdown.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with Councillor Holt in that if the owner markets the property at such a high price that no one's going to come and purchase it at the marketed price that they state or they choose to have it for a property that has been allowed to run down since 2009, then obviously it's not going to achieve the marketing aim. So I think, I don't know whether as a council we're allowed to get involved in that element at all. But I think a marketing campaign has got to be reasonable and has got to be workable as a true marketing campaign, not just the price that the owner wishes to achieve to enable them to meet their own goals. But I don't know how whether that is something that we are as an authority, able to get involved in. Perhaps that you can guide us, please.
Yeah, in a sense we already have, because we've had the internal view on it, saying that they, that they find they agree with the points raised. But obviously, members, you don't. So we could get a third party to assess the marketing that's happened so far, and normally the applicant would pay for that, and we would choose who was going to do it. So it'd be neutral, and it would be a third point of view on it, basically, or fourth if you include the Friends of the Queen's Head group, an independent view on it. And that would mean there wouldn't be extra marketing now. We would just get an independent view on whether the marketing that's happened was satisfactory. We could do that.
Catherine Grandin.
Can I ask advice, please? What does that then do to the community's involvement? Could you advise, please?
Well, if we were only looking at what's been done already, then it wouldn't change that at all. Basically, we'd just be looking at what happened in that period in time. If, however, you wanted a further period of marketing, which would be 6 months, then if interested parties, be it the Friends or anybody else, put in a reasonable bid which was close to what was being asked, then that could be a game changer.
Councillor Carr.
Thank you. I think that the whole marketing needs to be looked at as a whole, whether it was done correctly, if an independent body could do that. If it wasn't, this is more of a question, I suppose, if it wasn't, could it then be redone for the 12-month period? And if it was, could it then be extended to the 6-month period? And also, is it possible to look at the valuation of the property to see if it is being marketed higher than what it's actually worth?
So lots of choices there, basically. I think we have to be fair to all sides. So, 12 months is a long time, but if the marketing that's been done is found to be faulty, then I think we would have to be in a position where they'd have to go again. But the joint local plan policy, which is gathering weight as we speak, by the time we get to that, it may be that that policy has a lot more weight, and we may be looking at 6 months rather than 12 months. And the other thing is, if we just looked at the value, and the value is agreed by the third party, then we'd be in a position of coming back here saying, well, actually, that was a fair value. What do you think now, members? So, unless Claire wants to add anything to those various choices, that's the two things playing around in my mind are another period of marketing, which would be a longer time, or somebody checking the assessment, the value, which would be a shorter period of time.
Thank you, Mark.
Chairman, may I quickly?
Yep, go on.
I just state the fairly obvious. This is not a reason why members shouldn't pass a resolution that they wish to pass, but just that I'm looking at the front page. So the expiry date for this is the 30th of June. That's Friday, isn't it? So the applicant is at liberty when we're out of time to appeal against non-determination. I'm not saying they would do that, and it's something that we're not seeing as much of as we used to, because there's such a long wait for planning appeals generally. I think Mark and Harry would agree with that, but I'm just wishing to make the point that it's I'm not discouraging members from passing any resolution they want to, but that we can't force the applicant to wait for any period of time necessarily if they choose to appeal against non-determination when the time runs out. I presume the Friday the 30th is when this wouldn't have been a 13-week one, would it, Mark? This would have been
No.
No. So anyway, that'll be after the 30th of April. 30th of the 6th month. That is this Friday, isn't it? 30th of June. The applicant is unless they grant an extension of time to us, they're at liberty to appeal non-determination if they so choose. As I say, they may choose not to, but that's just something that I thought ought to be.
We ought to be aware of. Yeah. Thank you. Councillor Register.
Just for clarification, I remember that one of the officers mentioned that the valuation was based on comparables, and knowing that process well, having worked for chartered surveyors who were carrying out valuations, I know exactly how imprecise that is, because if you compare a derelict building with a similar size building in good repair or a derelict pub with one that's viable and running busy, there's no comparison. It's really hard to make a comparison. And so I think that needs to be looked at, is how the valuation and the comparables was done, because it's you just can't take the number of rooms and the square footage and do a comparison that way, because it's not viable.
Thank you. Claire, any comments?
The comparables provided at the time are in the planning statement submitted by the applicants. So there were 3 local pubs that were on the market at a price in excess of this one, and some others that had been sold at prices that were slightly below this one. And the agent's statement around the basis for their pricing is part of the planning application submitted by the applicant. So you can see how they've arrived at that.
Sorry, what was it you want to raise?
Just for clarification, I heard Councillor Holt give reasons for refusal, but I haven't heard you ask for a proposer and a seconder for the refusal. Or did you do that and I missed it?
We haven't done it as yet, and Councillor Holt hasn't made a proposal. Or do you want to make a proposal?
I thought I had. I'd given the reasons.
Sorry, Councillor, I thought you gave the two options about it.
That made a proposal for refusal, and I said there is the additional bit about EM24, but I'm not sure if we're allowed to add anything onto that, and you opened that up to the floor to discuss that, but I did actually make a proposal.
So you have a proposal?
To refuse it on para 84, 93, CS 17, 15 and 21.
Okay, have you a seconder?
If you...
Councillor Grundy, thank you. Park that.
Sorry, can I just confirm that you don't want EM24 mentioned in the reasons for refusal? It's just those other policies you mentioned.
At this stage, that was it. Then, as you said, we could open up and talk about EM24, which is what we've been doing. Now, we subsequently want an addition to that, and we can vote on that.
Your proposal won't mention EM24?
Not at the moment, unless members consider they want to add to it.
No? In that case, we have a motion with a proposer and a seconder. Mark, can I get you to summarise what you think that motion will be saying?
Yes. It's to refuse the application, being contrary to paragraphs 84 and 93 of the NPPF, and also being contrary to policies CS 17, 15 and 21 of Babergh's core strategy.
You're happy with that? Good.
Okay, Claire.
Thank you. Claire, will you open up a vote?
Thank you, Chair. Members, that vote is now in progress.
Thank you.
Councillor Grandin, have you been able to log? Okay. And Councillor Davies, are you logged back in now? Thank you. Councillor Maybury, sorry, are you not logged in anymore?
No.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I didn't realise that. Can I take your vote verbally then?
Well, it will be against because
Thank you.
I don't agree with it. Thank you.
Thank you, members. Chair, that's 8 votes for and 2 against.
Thank you.
Therefore, that application is refused.
That's
Thank
refused.
you.
For an end, we are penciled in for the next meeting on, is he trying to find his notes?
It's
12th, the 12th of the next month. Thank you very much for your attendance. Meeting is closed.